All right. So we should be live now if you guys can give me the confirmation. Hi, Josh. Nice to see you too. How's the sound, guys? Everything sound okay? Sound is good. Picture's good. Um, so if there's any issue with the picture or sound, I know we've been having some issues most weeks. Just let me know and we can see if we can fix it and make it better. So how's everyone doing today? Picture's good and sound is good. That's great. Chris. Oh my god. You like the crazy hair, Chris? Um all right, so let's start by going through some of the questions. Um uh just going to start at the top here. We'll probably like usual kind of ease into it. Do I'll probably do about like 30 minutes of questions that people have, and then uh, we can transition sort of into the usual type of conversation we have at the bottom of the chat, as people kind of find the stream and join us. So Altera asks, "Hi Jake, Are you active on E4, and what is your username on there?" Um, I'm not really currently very active on E4. I had a period where I was pretty active. Haven't been too active the last few months. I go on there occasionally. I do buy and sell on there occasionally, and I contact people that I know through there sometimes. So we talk through there, talk through Discord, or talk through Instagram or other places to try and make deals. Or so I use it for that. I do read some of the threads sometimes that seem that seem particularly interesting to me. My name on that, I think it's like Jacob MR7, Jacob MR9, maybe something like Jacob MR9. I think is what it is. All right, and then you asked, have you noticed that some people are selling modern packs as weighed on eBay? They don't seem to realize that weighing doesn't work with recent packs due to code cards. I have not noticed that. I have not noticed that. That's interesting. Um, yeah. So again, it could be examples of people trying to take advantage of inexperienced people, and trying to claim that there's a hollow in the pack or that there's something extra in the pack, even if they can't know that for sure, with the hopes that someone will buy it, open it, and then even if they request a refund, that now they've opened the product and so it's been sold. Technically they have been weighed, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a hollow in it. So there are probably sketchy things you could do with that for sure. I doubt it's a huge issue. I think most people who collect and have been in the hobby for a little bit learn about the differences in the code cards, and that they have different weighted code cards in the packs, as I'm sure everyone here knows that or the majority of people here know that make it so that the modern packs aren't weighable, unlike the vintage packs where the hollows would be heavier, and so you could weigh all the packs and figure out which ones had the hollows and just open them. All right, Liam Edmondson says, "Hey Jake, can you talk about the print runs for each Nintendo era, especially D&P and Black and White, Diamond and Pearl and Black and White, and at what stage you think it became heavily printed again?" So I don't know the answer to that. I don't know anyone who knows specifically, like if there are specific sets within DNP or within Black and White that there seems to be more or less of it printed. It's a really important question. I'm not like super into that era, although I have a lot of level X cards. I have a lot of the shiny cards from Black and White that I picked up. The secret rare shiny cards, which I always thought were undervalued, particularly before. So I picked up a lot of those. So I do have a lot of PSA cards and a lot of from those eras, but I didn't go I haven't been shopping for it enough to have a really good sense of like how many booster boxes have come up on eBay, how often they come up. That's the way we try and tell how much of this stuff is out there by how much of it comes up for sale. And just the frequency that we see it, and talking to people who have big positions in these sorts of areas, you can get a sense of, well, if they're one of the biggest collectors in the world of Black and White and they only have a couple of this box but they have 20 of that box, that's one data point, but nothing is a sure thing. The other big thing, of course, is watching the pop reports. So anyone interested in Black and White or Diamond and Pearl, your best bet is to carefully watch the population reports on like PokemonPress.com, see how quickly they're being graded, that sort of thing. I mean, what I can tell you is very difficult to grade the majority of those cards, like the level X cards from Diamond and Pearl. Those reverse shiny cards from Diamond and Pearl, very hard to grade as well. Like the Ponyta, for example, for those who know those are kind of underknown. The Voltorb, the number of them, the Omega, and then for Black and White, also a lot of very difficult cards to grade in those. So you're going to see probably a decent amount of 9s, maybe not that many 10s. I've had people starting to contact me more for level X cards recently. So most people want 10s. They don't want the 9s as much. So that's sort of the amount of data I can give you on it. I'm not like I wouldn't like, I think that there's risk in investing in those areas. If you want to invest, if you want to collect those areas, I like them too. I collect them too. But in terms of like investment in those areas, I think that it's really going to depend on, is Pokemon going to continue to grow? And I think if Pokemon continues to grow, those eras maybe will become more and more vintage feeling, and there isn't that much more product from that era than from the Nintendo EX era. Like probably there's not that much more. There's going to be a lot more X and Y and a lot more Burning Shadows, and then potentially even more vivid of our current sets of the Sword and Shield. But we don't know any of that. It'll be really interesting too to see how all of like the supply chain issues happening right now. Like, is Pokemon going to reprint all these sets? Are they going to print a demand of all these modern sets, or are they going to like not print a demand? And are even the modern sets going to end up being like decently scarce compared to the demand? So all of that's sort of up in the air. But all of that makes it like very risky. So I would say like there's a chance that those cards become vintage and valuable and enjoyed. And so you putting money and buying those cards, particularly in PSA 10, some of the harder ones to find with low pops, like definitely could be investable, and you could make money on them over time and they could go up. I could also see them, maintaining their value, which might be the most likely thing for at least a while. And then you also might see some of them dip in value too, or that era dip in value. But a lot of it's going to be tied to the overall Pokemon market and not necessarily those specific sets. But those are my general thoughts on those. But I really would go, I'd really start with the chase cards. I think eventually it's like the regular hollows from those sets, for example, like could become gradable and valuable. But like you need to have so much demand that first needs to push the prices up on on, all the level X cards and all, and all of the secret rares and that sort of stuff before you kind of move down. Let's see what else we got here. Tyler one says that Champions Path and Shiny Star V packs can be weighed. Oh, interesting. I didn't know Champions Path packs could be weighed. And Shiny Star V, I guess, yeah. Huh? I didn't hear that. That's interesting. Maybe someone else can confirm her. I'm not a modern pack seller flipper. It's not my area of like expertise that I like would ever need to worry about. Like, is this being I don't buy loose packs. I if I'm gonna buy modern, I buy it just for the fun of opening it, and I buy sealed products. So I don't worry about that sort of stuff. Michael Bowerman asks, could you give your thoughts on the sale of PSA? Do you think we will see some changes with things like cases, i.e. inner sleeves, that sort of thing, to stop cards moving as much? Oh, and getting pinched in the case, yeah. Yeah, so the moving as much is an interesting thing. People like Gary have their stories of Gary like putting cards that moved a little bit. He like put them in like a some sort of like mechanical spinning, some sort of device, and it shook it around a bunch, and there wasn't any like more damage on the card. So there's this idea from certain high-end collectors that say that it won't damage, even if it moves a little bit. It's not going to damage the case, or it's not going to damage the card. Excuse me. I don't know that to be. That doesn't seem like. That's might be a little bit of wishful thinking. Like, I don't know that personally. I'm not going to test it on my cards by shaking them around. I will say I have some cards that are loose, probably, a lot, honestly, that are probably loose. Like, probably, like, particularly Japanese, I found some of my Japanese cards shake, but, like, I would say, like, 1 in 20, maybe even a little higher, and I personally don't like it, and also I'm extra careful, with those cards, not to move them around too much. So be nice if they fixed that or figured out what was causing that. I think that certainly the main focus I imagine is going to be decreasing the wait times, and trying to get as many cards graded as possible and try to push things through. I don't really have, I don't have any insight. I know who bought, I read the articles that were out there. I don't have any more insight than you guys just by reading those articles that I read. So I'm not going to just like repeat what the article said, that type of thing. No personal insight in what that's going to do. As I say, they're a business. They're going to focus on what's going to make them money. Enbro says, thoughts on red/green Japanese gift set, specifically the little pops on the bird, Zapdos, Articuno, Moltres. Yeah, definitely cool cards. Pretty niche, but very cool. I don't have too many thoughts on it. I own a few of them because I liked them, and I think that other people will have that reaction. A lot of people that are, this is a cool holo. It's got like vending series, type of vibe to it. Vending series cards in it. Released the same time. So I think that all of that, is good. I'm not sure like what the current prices are at. Last I looked, the price had gone up a decent amount. So I don't think there's nothing from those eras outside of so the junior rallies are undervalued, but like outside there are like certain things that I think are still kind of like a little slept on, but for the most part, I don't see. I would tell you guys if like something I felt was like super slept on. I feel like things have actually been filled in pretty nicely in that era. Like, in a lot of the cooler cards have gone up the most, which makes sense. The ones that I as a collector wanted, those are the ones that other people have wanted. It's that's why being a collector. It's so important to be a collector if you're trying to invest or make money in this, because yes, influencers can artificially props things up for a certain amount of time or this or that, but ultimately a lot of us are going to like the same things, probably. Of course, we're all going to have our niches and things we like more than others and debate and that sort of thing, but a lot of your instinct on like what it would you like to have in your collection is probably going to be similar, for a lot of people across the board. So I think that's an example of like, and bro, like you like those, I like those, probably good pickup. And then you have to, whether that's the thing to buy or the Junior Rally is the thing to buy or the play promos, some of the cheaper play promos are the thing to buy. I always loved like the Lugia EX and the Ho-Oh EX play promo. And, the Mewtwo was like very hyped, or sorry, not the Mewtwo. The Mew was very hyped up from that set and was going for so much more than like the Celebi was going for and like the Lugia and Ho-Oh were going for. And of course the Mew is the rarest card and is also really amazing art, but I didn't think that made sense. So I also own the Mew, but at the same time I was able to buy those like Lugias and Ho-Ohs for like, I was getting them ungraded for like $5-10, grading them myself, getting PSA 10s in them. And there weren't like that many of them, and there aren't that many now. And those cards have gone up hugely in value just because as a collector, I was like, you're always should be looking for value and what doesn't make sense. Like this seems cooler than its price compared to this other thing that doesn't seem as cool or doesn't seem as desirable. And so that's what's really gonna separate, I think, in the long run, cause you to make purchases that at least retain their value better. So if the whole market shrinks, or retraces, which is possible, or if the market continues to grow and demand just gets higher and higher and higher, which would be wonderful and fantastic, either result, you're going to see likely the cards that you own are going to retain their value and do better and aren't going to be as dependent on someone like me or much bigger influencers, right, hyping them up or talking about them or pushing them. People are going to come to that conclusion themselves. Fina ZS, hi Jake. Can you see a shift from PSA to CGC in the long term future? From what I see of CGC cards, they seem to grade more consistently. So CGC, the things that CGC I would say has going for it, the big thing is that it's going to be grading more like error cards, unique cards, and it's going to actually put them in the label, and that's great. And PSA is very they don't do that. They refuse to grade lots of errors. They refuse to grade certain cards because it may have like the same number as another card, or there's some sort of like duplicator thing that they just refuse to do. And I think that CGC will have a market there. Although Beckett also has a market for some of those cards too. I see CGC more as a competitor for Beckett because of their I think that their grading standards. I think people looking for getting a 10 on a CGC is, hard, certainly on average going to be harder than getting a PSA 10. And so getting, so that CGC 10 card, without looking at the card and examining the card, I would assume the CGC 10 has a better chance of being a better card than the PSA 10. But at the end of the day, what you should be doing is not buying the grading company or buying the case, but you should buy the card inside, and the grade's a good way of helping you sort of look or analyze the card. So what I will say is that, CGC is very, very unlikely CGC is ever going to take over PSA or take too much market from PSA, because so many of the expensive vintage cards and the trophy cards and, so much of the value in the hobby and base set first edition, like so much of the value in the hobby has already been graded with PSA. And so I think CGC would have to get a lot of those cards graded in CGC so that people coming into the hobby now start to see a lot of those, like, high-end cards in CGC slabs, and they see that people are actually paying considerable prices for them. I know me personally, again, I buy the card and not the grade. I'd be fine buying CGC cards myself. Other people are going to want all uniform cases. So you're going to have a lot of differences there, but yeah, I mean, the only thing like that, as I said, like if CGC can get a lot of those cards and people to regrade them for some reason with CGC, I don't know how they would do that, offer some sort of deal, some sort of partnership relationship with high-end collectors, those sorts of things, offer them actual money to do it. Not even do it for free, but actually offer them money to flip over, that sort of thing. And or PSA just would have to like be terrible, right? Like the standards would have to keep decreasing things would have to keep getting worse. The lines would have to remain really long. Like all of those things would have to happen. I imagine that CGC understands all of this and they're getting into it because there's still a lot of demand and still a lot of money to be made. And right now there's so much heat around these things, and of course with sports and and potentially with a lot of other CCGs that aren't necessarily being graded that intensely right now. They may think, in 3 to 4 to 5 years, this seems to be like a card renaissance, and more Dragon Ball Z cards are gonna be great. Like more Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I know Yu-Gi-Oh has a lot graded already, but more and more is gonna come out from these other popular franchises. Maybe Digimon cards, more of those get graded. All these Middle Earth, Harry Potter, Star Wars, like these other sort of popular franchises. Maybe there's more and more market there. And then there's always going to be modern for CGC. So they're I'm sure the way they're thinking about it is that modern sports and modern Pokemon and these types of things are going to be the majority of the money that they make is going to be on those types of cards. As far as like I guess the last thing to mention, right, is that people have been able to like crack open the cases and those sorts of things. Again, I'm not an expert on the cases. Like, I would imagine CGC will figure that out and fix that over time. I'm not like too down on CGC. I'm not too high on PSA. I'm more interested in the card and the quality of the card itself, actually, than the grading company. I think the grading company stuff's a little bit of like a mania, which one is, and I think that there are certain people, I think, who are pushing PSA cards because they have relationships with PSA. There are certain people who are pushing CGC because they have relationships with the CGC company. And I just want my card graded correctly and for the case to like not damage the card at the end of the day, and for the case not to be like hideous. And to me, both cases are fine. I'm not super down on the CGC label or case. It's okay. Benja Brajovic asks, what do you think about the drop in price of the Champions Pass Shiny Charizard? Should it retain value in the long term? Yeah, so like Scott Pratt, for example, made that like negative Champions Path video. I'm seeing a lot of other people now come out with negative Champions Path videos, I think because they saw Scott's video and they're saying they're kind of jumping on that talking point. Champions Path was not the worst set of the year. I did an analysis on that set. What I said was, I feel exactly the same way now. It's not that fun to open because it's extremely top heavy with those Charizards. But Spurning Shadows was the same way. Not very fun to open, but people were searching for that rainbow rare card. That was very difficult to get. I think those Charizards are cool cards. People are gonna want those cards to fill out their Charizard collection. Like it's a better set. As long as there isn't too much of it printed, that set is going to have a card in it that's going to retain its value better than almost all the other sets that are happening right now that don't have that type of Chase Charizard in the long run. So for me personally, when I see a lot of people get really negative on something or go too far, in my view, in terms of the negativity, like that's an example, and maybe get afraid and start panicking selling, if they do. Like that's a time to maybe pick up some. But again, I don't invest in any modern. I don't think anyone should be investing in any of these things. I think it's far too risky. But in terms of collecting, and if you really want that, if prices really go down right now, it could be a good time. If people are hating on that a lot, I think a lot of it's irrational and just based on that it's not like a fun set to open, and that it was like just a weird set, right? Like I'm 100% on board with the fact that like why did they put that Charizard in there? It's such a small set, that they probably could have had a better placement of that. It felt a little random, a little haphazard. I feel all that way, but the card itself is a cool looking card, I think. And I think, 5-10 years from now, people are going to want the card and aren't going to care about the rest of the set. CG Do Work says, what up, Jake? So excited for today's chat. Oh, nice to see you, man. Enjoyed the Cardinal conversation. Garrett asks, how's it going, Jake? I just wanted to know your opinion on the no rarity Japanese base set cards. Seems like a good investment in my opinion. Would love to hear what you think. So I think that they're a bit overrated right now and a bit hyped up, particularly in the lower grades myself. The PSA 10 versions are extremely hard to find though. So I'd be careful with the lower grades because I'm imagining there's still a lot out there in Japan and just kind of around. There are also a lot of people who probably have them that don't even know they have them because, and the story of those Japanese no rarity is they weren't valuable initially, and a market was sort of created around them. People didn't even really like notice them that much first, and then all of a sudden they kind of became hyped up a little bit, and then they didn't have that much interest, and then recently they've been exploding again. You know, on this channel a few months ago I talked about how I like no rarity, and I wish I had bought more no rarity. So 100%, you know, and I have some no rarity. I don't have any 10s personally. I think I have a couple 9s, but I have a Mewtwo 9 and I think one other 9 somewhere. So, you know, I would not be buying these 3s and 4s and 5s for thousands of dollars. Let me put it that way. Okay, I think that that's crazy. I think that base set first edition English is better than no rarity. Outside of maybe some 10s that are just so scarce, you could make an argument of like, yes, I think the demand, you know, and the collectability and desire will probably be more for the English, probably, than those Japanese no rarity. In the long run, you might that might be offset by how rare that no rarity thing is. But at the end of the day, like, because no rarity is rarer, the PSA 10 versions are rarer, and this is what I talk about all on the channel so much. Like, rarity is objective. Like, that's how many there are. And so feelings about cards can drastically change. So 1 year, right, no one cared about no rarity. No one wanted it at all. It was stupid. Next year, it was hyped up. People loved it. It's a great thing. Everyone should collect it. And then the fact that there wasn't that much of it, when that subjective emotional opinion changed, now it was like, you know, it drove it up even faster because now people wanted it and they couldn't get it. And that type of feeling is what, and chase and not being able to find it is what really excites people and I think drives things up really, really high. So I think you just need to be aware of the history of that, what you're getting into when you buy into something like that. Those types of things, it's much better to buy into those things when people are not talking about them, when people are not hyping them up. You know, that's why I always talk about rarity on this channel and the importance of rarity. And if you can combine your collector knowledge and understanding of like, you know, I like this, it intrigues me, I enjoy it. And you know, going back to that values video I made about how do we objectively evaluate Pokemon cards, you know, applying those principles, you know, like in my last video I talked about how the Pikachu Illustrator is overrated. You know, I talk about how these cards are overrated. I had someone comment that they're tired of me talking about how the Pikachu Illustrator is overrated, and it's like that isn't an argument. Like, the argument of these cards is that they don't have the objective. It's a great example of how if the emotions ever swung, like what's keeping that card so much higher than some other trophy cards that might be rarer is that subjective evaluation that it is supposed to be the most expensive. And that's the same thing that happened with no rarity. It wasn't expensive and it wasn't supposed to be expensive, and then suddenly it was expensive and it was the first and it was supposed to be. So I just be careful that those swings can happen in both directions in hobbies, and price inertia is certainly a real thing. But that's why knowledge and education and listening to people's arguments. You know, don't only listen to my arguments. If you ever feel like I'm hyping something and not not hyping something or overlooking something and not giving you good reasons, like persuading objectable, rational reasons behind my belief, then, you know, you should disregard my opinion. Just say, well, Jake's being a bit subjective or biased today, and of course I will be on things, and we all can be. So that's what I would say. And I think that's the most important lesson whenever you're going through those old trophies, whenever you're looking at like no rarity, these very expensive investments. Why is this price so high? Who is pushing this price high? Why are people believing that it should be high? Are people really wanting it at those prices, or are people being told that they should want it? what depth of love and enjoyment are people who are paying those prices, do they really feel for it? Like that, like talking to people about it, and that's why I made so many videos on my channel about when I would talk to people about it, they didn't seem to have much depth of a feeling for a lot of the cards they were buying or real interest or knowledge about it. They were just sort of buying it because, Scott Pratt bought it, or they were buying it because PokeRev, bought it, or and they bought it probably for good reasons, right? They have reasons, but that's the type of thing that creates that instability. Is don't buy a card that I own. Don't buy like I love, right? I love the world stamped cards and those types of cards. Like if you don't, they're objectively very rare. But if you don't like them, you don't think there's going to be demand or collectability around them, like don't buy them because I own them. You're going to have cards in your collection you don't like. And no one ever might, I might be the only one who ever loves them, or, me and a few people might be the only one who ever loves them. So that's the type of stuff you have to be careful about. But those rare types of things are the stuff that really, from an investment perspective, can make you a lot of money. You're never going to make returns on modern, no matter what the modern product is, compared to returns that, that I made on the rare cards that I bought, and even set cards like PSA 10, vintage cards from Neo. These cards that only had like 10 in the, 15, 20, 25, that type of thing. And that's because what happened was, right, I saw the rarity, believed the demand eventually would come, and that's what exponentially explodes it, that combination. All right. Let's see what else we got here. What coffee are you drinking? I don't drink coffee. I actually just drink tea. I'm drinking like a peach green tea. Cameron Gray says, first time they've been able to be on the live. I'm glad you were able to make it today. Yeah, I apologize for those who can't be here because they're working Sundays or they have a different time. All right, so let's do another few questions and then I'll jump down to the bottom and maybe we'll have a conversation. So Shane McMurray says, 204 XYP Pikachu was only given to contestants in a tournament in Japan. Does that make it a trophy? It's Pikachu jumping at Dedenne. Seems to be underpriced based on the pop as well. Yeah, so there are a lot of trophy cards that not a lot of people know about that are pretty rare but aren't that expensive. And two things with that. One is how many people are going to want trophy cards in the future, and and Pokemon's going to keep making more and more trophy cards. And so there's going to need to be enough demand to kind of buy all of those new modern trophy cards that maybe aren't from like really big events necessarily, or, like Worlds. Part of why I really like the Worlds events is because that's the biggest event. And also the card art ties in with the history of the actual tournament. I do own cards that have like stamps, top 8 or champion on it, something like that from like a, that have a card that isn't a brand new art, that isn't a different art, that doesn't tie into the event, but is an extremely rare card. How much are those ever going to be worth? I have no idea. I like them. I like the rarity. I think they're cool, but they don't have as many things going for them. And so, yes, like I would say that's a trophy. For me, my definition of trophy is any card that's awarded by the Pokemon Company. So any card that you're not paying for is a trophy, something that was awarded, that was given out for some accomplishment, for something you did. And I think that includes art competitions for me. Other people will define trophy based on prices and that it has to be very expensive for it to be a trophy. And but to me, being a trophy collector is just collecting cards that were awarded, and there are cards that were awarded that aren't that expensive and that are easier to find, but those are not going to necessarily be as good of investments. I would still call them trophies, but they might be too common. It's not proven to me yet how deep the market is for trophies, and if the market is ever going to get deep enough and broad enough for the more modern, less kind of big event type, more like less rare, scarce trophy cards. It could get there, it might not. We'll see. I think that there's definite potential in things like that to become a lot more valuable in many years, just due to the rarity themselves. But the demand is going to be the issue. Retro Rambo says, "What are your thoughts on What are your thoughts on Neo cards graded lower than PSA 10? Seems the gap from 9 to 10 is pretty massive. Thanks. So the nice thing about PSA is generally PSA, I think, does a pretty good job of like doing a good job of grading like 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s, and 6s. Whereas when you get into like Beckett, because of their system where they lower your card, like you can only score zero point 0.5 higher than the lowest of the subgrades. The way that they grade the card, you get like you can get these weird grades for cards. You can get cards that shouldn't be graded that high. You can get cards that are actually nicer than their grade. I think PSA does a better job of kind of like not like taking, maybe, taking all of that stuff into account and like giving some things maybe a little bit of a higher grade than Beckett would because it looks nicer, or whereas Beckett's maybe more just, just because it has that one subgrade issue that it's going to hold the whole card back. Specifically on the Neo cards greater than lower PSA 10, it's going to depend on the card. There's going to be cards, buy the card, not just the grade. You're also buying the grade 100%. And the grade is, anyone who says don't buy the grade at all is misleading you from an investment perspective, because the way we work, right, is when you see that 10, it's exciting and you want that complete 10 set or you want a complete 9 set so even a strong 9 and a weak 10, even if the strong 9 is better than the 10, it's going to be probably pretty difficult to get someone to buy your 9 for higher or even the same price as someone with that 10. Even someone who's very much trying to buy the card because they're going to be like, well, it's not a 10 though, and I'll pay you a little bit more than the other 9s, but I'm not going to pay you 10 prices. So that's the type of thing you have to keep in mind with that sort of thing. But the best thing you can do is, right, you want to buy strong 10s if you're going to buy a 10. You want to buy strong 9s if you're going to buy a 9. Is what I try and do. I am fairly careful with that stuff, particularly on high-end items, particularly on rare items. And there's also always the option to regrade things and or send them to another company. For example, one thing that the high-end guys do all the time to make extra money is they crack 9s in PSA and they send them to Beckett if they think they can get 9.5s, because 9.5s, will go for that premium over the 9. And then, people crack those 9.5 cases and send them back to PSA to try to get 10s, to make more money. So all of those things will create value for your card if it's a strong 9 versus a weak 9. Daniel Ruiz says, should I grade light vintage booster packs? I got 3 light first edition fossil packs I got like 3 years ago. Not a huge fan on graded packs. It's nice that they're telling you, I guess, that they're not resealed, hopefully. you know that they're legit, which is a nice thing. I don't know what the premiums are like on graded packs. One of the big issues for a long time with PSA was when they did graded packs, it was sort of ugly looking. They would fold the tops of the packs over, and I just didn't like I didn't like that they did that to the pack art. I didn't like the way that they showed it, and I didn't really like the cases that much either. So all of that was a reason that I never did it. Now I have a number of packs that are sort of in mint, very like fresh out of booster box quality that I have stored very safely. And so it's possible I might get them graded someday if ever, PSA starts doing a better job. One big business model for people that to be aware of is often the graded packs are light packs, because what people were doing for a while is they would open a booster box, they'd weigh all the packs, they would sell the heavy packs as heavy, or open them and grade the cards inside, and open them or sell them to someone to open. For a higher price, and then with all the light packs, they would get them all graded, and then they would sell those for a much higher price than just a light pack would go. And so when you're buying graded packs, I would say your odds are higher often that there's a light pack inside. Now, at least it's a real pack and probably not resealed or anything crazy. So those are the things that I would be thinking about. And I think that the market, people who are sort of savvy, I think, in that market and buying those things are thinking about and concerned about, and part of why there's probably a little bit of hesitancy. It'd be interesting if PSA ever says like heavy pack on it, right? Like that would be interesting, graded heavy pack. I'll be interested to see too if PSA ever grades boxes and widens it. Obviously right now they're just trying to get their backlog done. and have got a lot of things going. But as far as that earlier question before about what how PSA might change, those might be other changes. They might maybe they'll start grading errors. Maybe they'll start grading, different variations. Maybe they'll start grading booster boxes. Maybe they'll change the cases for the packs. All stuff that you should be aware of as a collector or investor. Alvin's Gallery says suggestions of still being in the greed/delusion stage of the bubble, which will transition into the bull trap once PSA returns. So I would say that the market right now is, I don't really know what's going to happen next. For those of you who, watched my last video talking to Cardinal about it, Mason from Cardinal, he asked me, like, what do I think is going to happen specifically? And you guys know that I don't I'm not, whenever I give like a timeline on anything, it's like super speculative and like no one knows the timeline. But what would make sense if the market's going to behave rationally, which markets don't, over time they do, over long periods of time they do, and that's why value investors, tend to do the best, tend to do better than everyone else in the long run with that sort of like, stoic, objective, rational, mathematic mentality on why they're, and have reasons for why they buy everything and sell things at different points. But in the short run, it's anybody's guess. I mean, it's crazy, right? So particularly when things are so, like, I hear, so these are the things that I would not listen to. Is often easier, honestly. People saying that we're at the bottom right now, like, and that it's going to come back up for sure, or that now's the best time to buy, it's definitely going to come back up. Like, anything like that is either kind of naive advice, or because they're anxious about their own cards probably, and they want to stop the sliding. And I get that. I want the prices to come back up. Trust me. On a lot of these items that have retraced a little bit, I do think there are good reasons why it might come back up. I think a lot of the PSA submission stuff isn't going to come back for another 5-6 months and really hit the market. And I think that, this time of year, people are selling cards to try to buy presents, to do other sorts of things with their family, go on vacations. Although, I don't know how many people are going on vacations right now, but certainly some. So I think that there is a pattern that happens in Pokemon where things where there's also some of the retrace can be attributed to that, just the cooling off. So would I be surprised if prices stable out and then they come back like 10%, 15%? No, that would actually make probably a lot of sense. That seems very reasonable, but it also, they might go down further on a lot of these things. Now, I am seeing some stability or some resistance with some prices, in the sense that they were dropping like a brick, which is what happens in bubbles. I mean, we were in that was mania. That type of drop, when prices have in 3 days or go up or double and triple in 3 days, that's crazy, right? That's a completely unstable, irrational marketplace, where people have no idea what these things should be worth, and they're just going off of whatever anyone says. They're going onto YouTube and they see a video saying $250 for that, that PSA card is a good buy right now. It's like, what are you basing those numbers off, buddy? Like, I have no idea what a good buy and a bad buy is. It's absolutely crazy, the market. It's all up and down. It's part of why I don't engage, in it, other than certain cards that I really want for my collection and have been watching for a long time, and I'm willing to take the risk and willing to lose, some on it if it does retrace. But yeah, so if I had to guess it would be something like, we're going to see some sort of bottoming out, a little bit up, and then we're going to have to see how the market reacts to, one, people just like being able to do their other hobbies again when society opens up. Two, we're going to have to see how the global markets do in the next 6 months to a year. Like, it could be rough. And three, which I think will affect Pokemon eventually. People losing jobs and not being able to work. Like, this stuff is going to have a big, big impact on Pokemon, particularly the anything that isn't super high end. So there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of uncertainty. That being said, like I also think that things could stabilize and go up, and that but I hear people making predictions that next year's going to be like even better than this year, and even more people, and it's like I don't know where they're getting that from. It's possible that there's a huge untapped Pokemon market, and that people haven't even heard about. Like a lot of people who might want to collect it haven't even heard about it. And even though it feels like all these influencers were brought as many people maybe as possible into the market right now as there could be, and they all came in during this time, and a lot of them are going to leave, which I think is more likely than there are these huge hidden Pokemon fans that have never that are still haven't heard about it and yet would be super interested. But I'm sure that there are still plenty of Pokemon fans in the world who are going to start collecting the cards over the next few years. You're going to also have younger fans, right, who start to have more money. You're going to have older people like me who are going to get even further in their careers, maybe even have more money to spend. Although, interestingly, when you have kids, depending on the age group, and part of why collectibles can be not linear but more cyclical, is that, like, I wouldn't have spent the money that I spent on these cards if I had had kids, or if I had had more expenses. And so it's sort of, there's a time period in life, I think, where young people are starting their careers but don't yet have kids, maybe, and don't yet have, like Rafi, for example, like he would have spent a lot more money if he didn't have kids. So there are a lot of people who are maybe in my situation who are going to have kids who are going to leave the market for a while, not because they want to leave, but because they don't have the money, to engage in it, or to be as present or engaged in everything. So those are all things to consider with the market, and the future. Uh, what we've seen, the best thing we can do is we can look at baseball card, we can look at sports cards, we can look at comic books, we can look at these other types of hobbies, and we can see that what happened over time was certain things stabilized, certain things imploded in the market and never recovered value. And that's going to happen in Pokemon. There are certain things right now that people are saying are valuable that will never go up in value again. Like, not everything. If you think everything in Pokemon will go up in value always, over time, like you buy any modern product right now and it's going to be desirable and collectible into the future, that's not going to happen forever. So it's possible it could be happening now, because theoretically, let's say we're still in the very early stages of Pokemon, and even the amount of product they're printing now is nowhere near the amount of demand there's going to be in the future, and then modern product is really undervalued right now, potentially. That would be the one theory, the one possible theory to make it that you should buy a lot of modern. There's no evidence to suggest that that's going to happen necessarily. It's just anybody's guess. So really, you're buying higher prices for the possibility of the future type of thing. But outside of that scenario, it's very, like, there are gonna be things, like, having that attitude of everything is going to go up is the wrong attitude. Like, having the attitude of what is collectible, what is investable, and what is always going to be collectible. What is always going to be very desired, and what is there not going to be enough of to go around. That's the stuff that's going to see returns over time or go up in value. The stuff where there's enough to go around and always going to be enough to go around is the stuff that's never going to go up in value and is actually going to go down in value potentially, from this period certainly, and never gain value. And that's what happened in comic books. That's what happened in sports cards for the vast majority of the product. Okay. So I'm not saying that's going to happen necessarily, but you have to be aware of that possibility. That's all this channel talks about. And I think people have this idea that I'm saying that that's what is going to happen, and that I'm not giving, like, the positive side of the argument enough. It's like, no, I'm just giving you guys the missing argument on the internet right now, or the missing part. Every channel that I'm seeing, or most channels that I'm seeing are saying, buy all the time, even now, and they were saying buy at the height, and now they've changed their tune. They're buy at the height, it's going to go forever. Now the same people are saying buy now because it's you have such a deal, because it's always going to go up again, and it's like, it's not it's not good analysis of what makes markets function and work in the long run, and the risks involved. Um, so hopefully that's helpful for you guys. Um, Pokey Invest. Let's do a few more questions and then we'll transition over. Pokey Investments Plus says, "What are your thoughts on Pokemon Snap cards? I really love the Bulbasaur one I have, but only have one so far. I'm not a PSA guy myself, so my copy is raw. So having one is a huge accomplishment. They're some of the rarest, most sought after cards. That's amazing that you have a Bulbasaur one. So now there are the real Snap cards, and then there are Snap cards that are like not the ones that, like the Snap Pikachu, for example. No one's ever seen the actual Snap Pikachu from the competition. So if you have the one that there's only 20 of in the world, supposedly, right, distributed, those cards are a fortune, you know. So congratulations on owning such an amazing trophy card. The answer is, if you can find them, buy them if you like them, because no one, you know, I know people who have them. I know a few people who have them, and they're not selling, for sure. Basic Trainer says, "Hey Jake, what's your take on PSA first edition Lugias?" Um, Probably not a good time to buy. You know, like, I love the card, and I've been talking about Neo and, you know, and that card, and how the old guard talked a lot about base set first edition forever, and, you know, and that really, like, Neo has been the best performer of anything. Like, those cards have done better than any other card by percentage basis during the last year and a half. So they've been the biggest winner. So people who bought Neo did better than anyone else. Um, right now they're being super hyped, and they're being hyped because of that huge PSA 10 first edition price. And so my instinct when I see things like that is, oh, too late. You know, if I didn't buy it already, probably too late, probably not a good time. Now, the counter argument to that is, oops, I was really wrong about it, and actually it is a good buy, because the fundamentals are so strong that even though it's hyped, people are still undervaluing it. And that I don't know the answer to. You know, I would be careful. I'd be careful buying that stuff into the hype. You know, if you're seeing like a decent portion of the market, right, retrace, while you're seeing some cards really increase in value, you have to be careful buying those cards that are increasing in value. That's, you know, and really trying to understand what's happening here. Why is that happening? Is it something that I missed, or is this short-term sort of hype, and what's going to happen there? I don't really know what's going to happen with that Lugia. I felt like it's been undervalued, you know, relative to base set for the entire time I've been in the hobby. So is it undervalued now at 129,000 versus the Charizard? No, that seems good to me-ish, like 1/3. You know, if it's all random nonsense speculation, right, guys? Like, I don't know why that seems good to me. It feels better. That makes more sense to me. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if that Lugia was a lot closer to the Charizard. I mean, for example, to throw this out here, and this is an irrationality in the market, and we can say the base set first edition Charizard has a place on its own above all other Charizards. But if we look at, like, for example, Gold Star Rayquaza versus the you know, in PSA 10 versus the Gold Star Charizard in PSA 10, Gold Star Charizard's always been going for less. So it's you know, because the Rayquaza was harder to grade, because the Rayquaza was harder to find. So there's this, you know, just like the Lugia is much harder to find than that first edition Charizard, particularly in PSA 10, much harder to get. So it's interesting how, like, these things happen, and how prices get decided, and why people are willing to pay certain things for certain things. Now, what I will tell you is, anyone arguing that any of these prices are stable and are what they should be, they're talking nonsense to you, because things have been moving up so much. You know, anyone making predictions, oh, I think that this thing is going to be worth 20,000 next year, 10,000 next year. What, you know, whenever I see videos like that, I'm like, that is such utter nonsense, because the market is so in flux, and determining, like, what fair market value is for something at any one given time is so difficult because of that. And so even determining like future prices on these things, or where this should be versus that, what I would tell you is, go back to the fundamentals I teach. Like, that, to me, my genuine belief, guys, is that that as this market matures and as the people mature in this market, and there's a lot of immaturity in this market, I'll make a good argument about something on this channel, to be completely honest with you guys, and then I'll get someone saying, I don't agree, that's stupid. And it's like, all right, like, why? Like, I'm glad you don't agree. I encourage people to disagree with me, but I want to hear I want to hear the argument. I want to hear why my value assessment's wrong. I want to hear what I'm missing, because that'll help me grow. And so that is what I would say about those. Be careful about anything that people are talking about that's being pushed. Be careful about gold stars now. Be careful, because gold stars, with the new Aoki video, it's like, I've been talking about gold stars forever on this channel. Gold stars, much lower pop, the rarity is there. Eventually the demand may come. I don't know if the demand will ever, that type of thing. So and more isn't going to come on the market. I'm not afraid of lots and lots of gold stars coming on the market. I think particularly even like 9s and 8 gold stars are they're a lot more solid than a lot of 9 and 8 Watsies, because there are going to be so many more 9 and 8 Watsies, and there just aren't that many gold stars in the world of any grade compared to Watsy. But it's still a set card, so it's still mass-produced compared to trophy cards. So you see the thought process. Chris Stream says, Chris is a college friend of mine. It's hilarious that he's here. I'm not sure if he has any interest in Pokemon, but he's hanging out with us today, it looks like, at least for the moment. Chris and I have talked. Chris is interested in some graded boxes, potentially, and looking into, because Chris loves video games. Oh, wow. Josh Harris just donated $100 to me. That's extremely generous, Josh. That is definitely my biggest donation so far. I really appreciate that, man. He says, Merry Christmas, Jake. I just wanted to say thank you for your time and doing these live chats. You've helped me deal with the anxiety of the current market. I decided to sell and lock in profits while I could. I'll come back when I feel more comfortable. Yeah, I think that, that's super wise. It's so hard, Josh. When I sell anything right now, to be totally transparent with you guys, I have a feeling of I hope that it was a good week to sell. I have no idea. You know what I mean? I knew I sold a bunch of base set unlimited at the height, because I knew that was very logical. It was all these videos are being made online about quoting nonsense prices for unlimited, and and that Charizard, I sold some PSA 9s around $4,000 to $6,000. It's people were buying them, and I just was like, that's crazy. So that was a very obvious time to sell. The rarer stuff is really hard. I don't know if now's a good time to sell. Now could be a good time to hold for a month. But then if you hold for a month, it might go down further. And that exactly is the thing, Josh, is it's very stressful. It's very, very stressful, and I feel the stress too. We all do. So it's the stress of an unstable, unestablished, irrational marketplace where we don't know what things should be worth. There are tons of influencers hyping things up, telling you what you should buy, telling you what you should think, not giving the best arguments, maybe not listening to other people's arguments. It's the sign of a unestablished, immature marketplace. But the cool thing, then the positive thing is, look how many people are interested. And a lot of this interest is going to stay, and this type of thing is what forms established markets over time. I feel very confident in Pokemon as a brand, as a product, that it's going to be here for a long time. I'm not afraid. I'm not fearful that these cards are going to go to zero. These sorts of things. And if they did go to zero, I'd be okay. I love the cards, and it would be an incredible learning experience. So I try to look at it that way, and that's a good thing to always look at these things as. Most of us here are probably pretty young. Financial learning experiences and failing at things is a humongous part of increasing your wisdom through that humility, through understanding where you went wrong. You can go back, you can analyze it, and we're also young, probably in this hobby, or the vast majority of us. That we have a lot of room and a lot of time in our lives to make money and be successful, if that's our goal, is to be successful financially. And so also just treating this, Josh, too, as that learning experience of, and you also learn about what type of investor you are. So like you, Josh, I'm not a flipper. investor type, and that's true. My real investing is in the stock market, right? This is my hobby and my passion and fun. But when we look at the stock market and we look at my real investing, my more long term, what I view as the most investable things, and where I'm just doing pure investment. Uh, uh, it's I am not capable of day trading. It's far too stressful. Like, you also have to know your personality. Like, for me, picking things that seem undervalued, holding them for a very long time, selling them when I need to sell them, and not worrying about, am I going to hit the exact right high price point. That is the way that I can maintain my sanity, and also I think over time to make the most money for my type of the way that I'm comfortable doing things. That being said, like, flipping and day trading for certain people and making lots and lots of deals can be extremely effective, and people can make a lot of money doing that. They can also lose a lot of money in the short time doing that. So it's it's crazy. But thank you so much, Josh. I really appreciate that. Very, very kind of you. I'm gonna use that $100 to um, take my girlfriend out or do something fun with that. So know that that money is gonna go to, like, a nice night for us, and I really appreciate that. Um, let's see what else we got here. So I think I'm gonna go to the bottom of chat and just see kind of what's going on. Um, Josh says, "You're welcome, Jake. You helped me so much. I'm really glad that it was able to be helpful." All right. So I am going to the. So Ari Burst says, "Not going to lie, but flipping can bring such a rush." Yeah, and I think that flipping and making a lot of money and making those huge profit, it can actually, the danger of it can actually be very addicting. And, like, there's the fun of doing it and the enjoyment of doing it, but there's also the addiction side of it and the addiction aspect of it, and why people often lose so much money when they day trade. There's a psychological component, because what happens is you win money. It's the same thing with gambling. You gamble and you make some money and you love it and you get that rush and it's super fun. And the same thing is probably happening in Pokemon to a lot of people. They gambled. They came into this market. They didn't really know anything about it. They bought, Gary Vee told them to come over. They bought a bunch of cards. It tripled in price. They felt that high, right? That high, and then they become addicted to that sort of return, to that sort of high, and they're constantly psychologically and emotionally going to be chasing those profits again. And when you do that, it creates an emotional instability, which can lead to very, like, very risky decision making, and can really financially be detrimental. So, for example, if you start losing, you may take bigger and bigger risks to make up for that loss and to try and get it all back quickly. It's a very common thing in gambling. And I think that happens too with pack openings. Someone opens a pack and it's a bad pack, and then they buy more because they're like, well, I'll make my money back once I get a hit. So I'm going to open more and more and more. And it's like that same sort of thing can happen in investing, because investing is gambling. There's definite gambling elements to it, particularly the shorter term and the more flipper style you are in investing. But like anything else, I mean, you know, gambling can be fun. Flipping can be fun. It's all about that balance. Omnipoke said, or thoughts on PSA sale, someone asked. So I talked a little bit about that before. John Pokemon asks, thoughts on the 1999 Nintendo playing cards? Yeah, I'm seeing those pop up, and I've had some people ask me about them. Maybe you're one of the people who asked me about them over Instagram. I think that they are cool looking, but I'm not sure how rare they are. I'm not sure how easy they are to grade, and they're a bit like, when you start grading playing cards, like all of those cards, like there isn't a surprise of which one you get. There isn't a difficulty. You buy the pack of playing cards, you get all of them. There isn't a rarity to them. They don't have a lot of collectible elements that the cards do, because they have like varying rarity and difficulty to pull. But they're very cool. I think I would put them as more like they're a little bit more of like the Pokemon kind of like merchandise and getting cool kind of Pokemon things graded, but they are technically cards, I guess, because they're playing cards. Mixed feelings on them. Love the way they look though. Very cool. And so I think if you like them, go for it. So I think they're going to be like super investable. Maybe. No idea. You know, they could be. Uh, um, Interesting that I'm surprised that BGS grades them honestly. Like that is what it will make them a lot more gradable. Obviously, they look cool in that case. They're pretty easy to grade from what I understand. A lot of them get those like 9.5s, even potentially some will get 10s, pristine 10s. So those are my thoughts on them. Swami says it's fun to collect for free, but it has to be a hobby and not a job. Yeah, I think that um, that it's like it's yeah, you have to answer those questions for yourself. You know, I think you and I, Swami, are very similar in the fact that we both love collecting. We both love that sort of stuff. We try to be like very thoughtful financially in our purchases. We will certainly sell our cards and take profit and make money that we will take to the other parts of our life, but we also would like to reinvest some of that money in Pokemon. You know, I think that there are other people who are really trying to make a go of this as a full-time career, and all the power to them. I hope that they succeed. You know, most of my men are lovely people. Even if I didn't like them, I would hope that they succeeded and that it went well, as long as they're not hurting anyone, you know, in the process of their business or manipulating anyone. You know, I always come back to that. It's like, if you're not, I'm not going to say anything negative about you on my channel if I feel like you are not doing stuff that's like directly negative, you know, or hurting the community. I had someone comment once like that they thought that it was gross that I was like against people being successful, and it's like that's not at all how I feel. Like, I really, when people are happy and healthy and doing well and are sharing that with others and helping things grow and giving back to other people because of the wealth, whether it's financial or wealth in terms of having family, in terms of having friends, in terms of having happiness, whatever that is, that's like the height of human ability. That's like the height of human civilization and ability. There's nothing there's nothing better that we, I think, you know, that we are capable of, you know, than having working hard or developing something that has value, getting something from that, and then sharing that around and giving it back. And I think that the vast majority, I think the vast majority of people feel the exact same way as that. So this idea that there are lots of bad people out there and that like we're only competitive and we hate each other and we're, you know, everyone's trying to drag each other down, or this very toxic thing in culture, you know, this idea of like toxic positivity, you know, this like idea that like you have to pretend that people who are mistreating others and putting people down and taking advantage of others, like that isn't happening, or like not at least ask and talk and start a conversation, because of course it's extremely hard to know like what's going on in a person and why a person's doing what they're doing. Like you can't know that for sure, but at least bring it up as something to debate or talk about. Like that's a very dangerous thing when we shut down free speech and the ability to question each other's motives and talk to each other and hear each other out. Like that's very dangerous. But that is not coming from a place of I don't want these people to be successful. I don't want these people to make money. I just don't want it to be on the back of a lot of people losing money and a lot of like middle class and lower socioeconomic class people losing money, which is what happens in pop culture collectibles. Like that's what happens because most of us are not wealthy. The vast majority of us. So I hope that's clear. Michael Barman says, never be embarrassed about what you love. You only live once. So don't allow others to influence you like that. Yeah, I think find what you enjoy and figure out how to do it in a way that doesn't like harm other people or upset other people. You know, I think that as you guys can see, like when you guys are upset with me or someone says something negative, I remember it because I care. Like I care when someone doesn't like my video. Like even if it's one person, like I care when someone gives me a negative comment. It makes me reflect on myself and say, am I doing something wrong here? You know, could I be doing something better? You know, like that type of you know, that is the one positive potential thing of like social media, these types of things, of having like a bigger influence and talking to more and more people, is you get a lot of feedback and you can take it to heart and try to work on yourself and figure out what's going on there. But part of that feedback, as you're kind of talking about here, is like realizing sometimes that like no, like what you're doing, actually you do believe in to the best of your ability, with the knowledge that it might be wrong, or you might be, you know, you'll look back on it and there are things you're doing that are wrong. And when it comes to collecting, it's the same thing. It's, you know, it's, if someone tells you that's stupid, don't collect modern, it's ugly, like, what a stupid comment. Like, collect what you enjoy. Like, if you think vintage is stupid and ugly, like, it doesn't offend me at all. That's totally fine. You know, that's great. You know, you don't have the connection to those cards that I have, which is fine. You know, if you like modern, if you like the middle stuff, you know, it's, as far as the subjective part of this hobby, it'd be nice if we could all be mature adults and realize, like, first of all, it's just cardboard, you know, at the end of the day, and it's just a collectible, and it's meant to be enjoyed and to have fun with. And so that side of the hobby should just be fun, and we should be very accepting and tolerant of like what people like within the hobby. Now, the financial side and the competition and people influencing and manipulating and trying to make money, that's the part that gets icky. You know, that's the part where there are people's livelihoods. There's a lot of more. That's why Pokemon gets very heavy and moves away from that just pure collector joy, where the heavy stuff comes in, and the life stuff comes in, is like, this isn't just cardboard. This isn't just a children's card game. There are lots of people who are trying to make a living off of this, and there are also lots and lots of people who are trying to at least make partial living off of this. And there are other people who are going to try and retire on Pokemon or have it be a big part of their investment portfolio or their future. And so all of that is happening, and you know, managing all of those different things at once is a challenge. Omnipoke says, Jake, it's Christmas Day. You have invited 6 Pokemon people over. Who gets that invite? My favorite Pokemon people? Well, you would get an invite, Joe. I'm very fond of your channel, and just we haven't talked in a while. It'd be nice to talk again at some point in person. Not in person, but you know, over Zoom or something. We should also do something again on the channel. It's been far too long. But yeah, it's people that I just feel like are, you know, people who love the cards, are interested in the cards, interested in the history, are honest about what they know and what they don't know, don't pretend that they can predict things that they can't predict, don't speak outside of their ability, but also stand up to, you know, bullies, frankly, in the community. There are channels that are bullies, there are people that are bullies in the community. You know, I've been pretty clear about, like, the, you know, a lot of people I like a lot of people I like have been on the channel. You know, so I'm not going to pick just 6, but because I have more than that Pokemon friends, but a lot of the people on the channel tend to be the people who I invite on the channel are the people who I have respected the most and liked the most. Now, there are people who I haven't had on the channel yet that I also like and respect, and I'm hoping to have on in the future. So just because someone isn't on the channel doesn't mean I don't like and respect them. Let's see what other people are saying. John Pokemon says fan club promos versus play promos. So they're the same thing, really. I mean, they're the fan club was the first, like, variation. You know, it goes like fan club, then play promo, then Dasuki Club, but it's the same type of thing where in Japan they were given out for people who they were given out to kids, you know, I assume mostly, and young adults who were able to, like, do a certain number of tasks that they got points for, and then they traded those points in for those cards that were sent to them. And so they're you know, very similar release. So the 3 of those things really are tied together, and that's why the Master Scroll actually should be tied with those things and not not like Trophy Kangaskhan, Unicarp, and Tropical Wind, which are, you know, more tied together, that are like the real trophy, you know, in Lucky Stadium. So so within those cards, which ones do I like think are the best or I like the most? I mean, when we're thinking about value, we have to go back to age does matter. You know, the fan clubs were the first ones, right? You have to think about the rarity, how many seem to be out there. What seems to be the least out there potentially is the Master Scroll. Potentially, I think it's too early to really know that for sure. And there also could be someone pretty savvy who has a number of them ungraded, who, you know, keeping that pop low. So I think you have to be careful of things like that. You know, to make it appear rarer than it might actually be. These types of things. Uh, you know, there's a lot of money on the line. So when there's a lot of money on the line, I would just be aware of that potential. You know, whereas like the fan club and the like the like EV Porygon, you know, those are my favorites, to be honest, of any of those. Like I would rather own those than any of the other cards from any of those sets. I think then my favorites, I do like that Mew EX card quite a bit from the play promos, and I like I don't like the Gold Star Dogs as much because you can get those arts. They're still cool. Obviously, the Espeon and Umbreon are cool because you can't get the hollows. You can only get those in hollow in the Japanese. You can't get them from English set cards. So, Rebirth says, "I tell you what sucks is all the gatekeeping in the hobby." Yeah, so, you know, it's going to exist in every hobby. Honestly, Pokemon people are pretty open. So what I will say, one positive thing is that, like, there's a lot of money to be made with this information that I'm giving to you guys out for free. Like, you know, there's, and it's a bit ironic that people are resistant to it sometimes, but it's like, it's, there's a lot of money to be made and value keeping things secret from the mass public, you know, or keeping the perception that certain cards should be the most valuable. Like there's a lot of money behind it. And so to not acknowledge that is a problem in and of itself. And so I think but that's true in life and in any hobby. So it's just part of being a savvy businessman. That's never going to go away completely. Now you're going to find people who are more trustworthy than others. You're going to find people who have their own who have their own sort of like internal ethics around business practices and want you to know everything about a card before you buy it from them, and want you to even hear that you shouldn't buy it, or that you think it's overpriced right now, like these types of things. And then you're going to have other people who are going to take full advantage of the lack of knowledge and of the you know. But I can tell you, Rebirth, like, there's a lot of Pokemon YouTube videos, and there's a lot of good ones, and there are a lot of good Pokemon YouTube channels, and there are a lot of, and if we compare that to like Dragon Ball Z or to some of these other hobbies, there's almost none. So it's so much harder to get information, and I'm trying to like learn everything I can about all these other hobbies, and I've literally been tracking people down on Instagram and Facebook, like the creators of the cards, people who've been collecting for years, to try and like learn the secrets. And, you know, so I do the legwork to ask and engage all these people to get the answers. And Pokemon, a lot of people who are coming new into Pokemon have the advantage, you know, of me sharing them on this channel, and many other people sharing them too. This is not this channel. There are a lot of other channels with the same level of quality and knowledge happening right now, you know, and that's what's great. You know, when I started the channel, I was like, I need to start this channel because the difference between like these Discord conversations and E4 conversations and like the YouTube conversations, night and day. So it was sort of like, but now you have like lots of people entering the space and sharing that information. So there's much less of a need. Let's see. What other people are saying. I am going to have to go exactly at 5 today, guys. I know I've been doing like longer streams than usual, but so that's about 40 minutes from now. Omnipoke asks, so what would be your favorite just for fun boosters? One for modern and one for vintage. Um, let's see. One for modern and one for vintage. I would say one for modern. To open. Probably. I like Cosmic Eclipse a lot. My three favorites are probably Cosmic Eclipse, Vivid Voltage, and Hidden Fates. Are probably my three favorite packs to open. Vintage. Ooh. I'm not sure I could. It could just be for fun. They're so expensive, but it would be a lot of fun. Um, hmm. If I could open any pack of vintage, I would probably open. I'd probably open Skyridge. Either Skyridge or Neo Destiny or Neo Genesis. Those are my three. Would be the three ones that I'd want to open. Reber says he flips modern cards to buy trophies in Japanese promos. Thoughts on that strategy? Yeah, good strategy. I personally, I think, I mean, at the end of the day, it's hard, but I would invest in rarity, and I would flip things that are not rare but that have high demand and flip them at margin and just keep selling and selling and selling. Like if I was gonna start a business or try to make money, that's what I'd be doing, and that's what everyone's doing. You know, if you watch all the businesses, what are they opening? They're opening and they're flipping and they're selling you packs of modern mostly. The vast majority. Um, and then they're taking that money and they're investing it in some rarer items. CG Dowork says, "Hey Jake, Royalty Gaming Pokemon asks, what is your opinion on cracking a case and sending in raw versus sending for a crossover? Which do you think yields a better grade?" So it's a question I have too, and I don't have the answer because I just haven't done it enough to really have a sense of it. I think common sense, right? The worry would be that if you send it in, if you don't crack the case and you just send it in for a regrade, they'll see the old grade and they won't want to be wrong. They won't want to acknowledge that maybe they were wrong last time, or just that they'll be less likely to see it as a 10 if they first see it as that 9, and if you're doing if you're switching from BGS to PSA, it's the same thing. Probably the companies don't want to be they don't want to grade higher or lower than the other company. They want to probably have a consistency, probably, or you'd be concerned about that. So I think that's the pro cracking argument. The anti cracking argument will be, well, what if they grade lower? I think they're less likely to grade lower if you keep it. But if if you really want to regrade, you really think it should be higher. So maybe worth just going forward and cracking it and getting that whole fresh new pair of eyes on it. Might be worth it. So, but it's a big risk, particularly if it's an expensive card. Huge risk. And that's part of why I think a lot of people don't do it, even though there is a lot of money to be made by. You could literally have a business that just does that right now. Just finds cards that are undergraded, cracks them, send it to the other company, get that 0.5 higher, and just rinse and repeat. There's so many ways to make money right now in Pokemon by doing stuff like that, because in the secondary market. John Pokemon asks, do you video record the shipping process for high-end items? I have done that before. I rarely sell very high-end items, and it depends what we mean by high-end. I'm pretty comfortable selling things under $500, to people I've never really dealt with before, as long as it's through goods and services through PayPal, for example. I don't have an anxiety about it. I've never had a problem, and I feel like I'd be covered. But when we start talking about $1,000, $2,000 thing, I'm very hesitant to deal with people I don't know. So most of the high end deals I've been doing, I do it with either other YouTubers, public people who I know aren't gonna scam me on it, and they know I'm not gonna scam them because they know me as well. And I think or they have like a big Instagram. Like part of the benefit of also doing a YouTube channel or starting an Instagram, which is a really good thing for a lot of people who don't want to make videos, understandably, is you can develop a reputation, and that reputation can help you be more trustworthy, of course. And help you know, John, like who to trust. Like you'll feel more comfortable buying from me or buying from someone who is trustworthy. Like something may go wrong, but you know that the person's not going to intentionally scam you. But it doesn't hurt to video record. I also am not sure how much it's going to help, really. And that's the other thing. Like how much, like if it gets lost or someone claims that it was never, like you could have just taken it out of the box after. You know, unless you video record the whole process of like then dropping it off and the mail person taking it, maybe, you know. But what I would say, John, is use goods and services. You know, don't do family and friends, of course, through PayPal, and you know, eBay will also give you protection, particularly if you're buying. And John says high end, thinking 2,500 plus. Yeah, that's definitely quite high end, I would say. Josh Harris asks, if you don't mind talking about it, I'd like to hear what kinds of cards are you collecting in the Middle Earth CCG. Just R1s, R2s, or specific artists. I love the John Howe and Ted Naismith artworks. Yeah, so what I'm starting with is I'm trying to get each box, and I'm trying to get each set filled out. I am doing like complete. I always start with complete binder sets generally, and I am going for the boxes. And I haven't completed that yet. I'm working on a lot of other purchases and goals right now. I've been pretty active in some other markets, and so that's been my focus, not so much on Middle Earth just recently. But I'm still definitely interested in Middle Earth. I just bought a complete White Hand set. White Hand's very affordable, and I got a bunch of boxes too. I got a few boxes from White Hand actually because they were just very, very affordable. I got a deal from someone, quite a bit under eBay prices, and just yeah, and so so I have those, and those will be fun to open. I like a lot of the artworks from that set, and that set's very cheap. For those who know Middle Earth, that's probably the cheapest set. That or Dragons, the second set are the cheapest. So, generally speaking, the cheaper stuff I enjoy collecting because it's fun. It's not as expensive, and I get to open it and have that fun with it. But I don't consider that stuff like investable or stuff that I think will go up in value. When I spend a lot of money, I tend to be more, I think we all, would be this way, cautious and thinking, does this have investment type qualities to it or potential investment type qualities if I ever needed to sell this, in an emergency or whatever, or to retire or something. SGR7 says, how come I can't go online and buy a box for a fair price, but when one seller rises the price, they all do at the same second? Yeah. So, like, the great mystery of evolutions, right? I mean, that's what I like the mystery of, like, there were 10,000 of those boxes and still are for sale, right? Like, endless amount of Evolutions booster boxes for sale and will be for the foreseeable future, But instead of them all selling at $100, which is what they were, or $110, which they were all selling at, all of a sudden they're all selling at $420, and they've been there since. They were a little higher, they came down a little bit. Now they're still at that point, and the people are still buying them. And that just goes to that thing of like how effective that sort of strategy is. It's like if we all just like got together and we raise our prices, this much, and we just refuse to lower them for a little bit, and then some hype channels pick up on it. It's like, whew, is that an effective strategy right now in Pokemon? Massive amounts of people who weren't willing to buy a product at $100 now are jumping over each other to buy it at $400. That's rationality for you, craziness. But so yes, people are doing that. People are working together. For sure. Businesses see what other businesses are selling for. They're communicating. They're coming up with business strategies. That is happening. So as a buyer, being aware that like there are lots of people trying to make money on you, off of you. so that, and that's okay. That's their business, and it's fine. They're not bad people. I think that it's okay talking to your friend and being like, we both have this. Let's not bid against each other, or let's not sell against each other, right? I think that's perfectly reasonable. But the reverse of that is you have to be a smart buyer and realize that that's happening, or a smart seller and realizing that buyers are doing that too. Very competitive. Very, very competitive. Zurib says, on a light note, Jake, you are due for a haircut. I know. I'm looking like a wild man. My girlfriend is not pleased. She'll be happy you mentioned it. um, let's see what else we got here. Oh, hey James. Nice to see you here. Coming up from, I'm sure, your insane work. James, how are things going, man? I haven't talked to you in a little bit. Are you doing okay? Are you getting your orders done? So he says, so am I an idiot for holding on to base first edition heavy packs, or would you sell trade some of them for a trophy card? Problem is, I have no idea about trophies. So, I mean, if I had them, James, I would have sold them right after Logan Paul made his video, to be completely honest. But in terms of like the long term, I think that they are, that's when I sold a lot of my first edition, and a lot of my unlimited base stuff was right after that. Um, he says he's submitting cards as we speak, but in terms of like the long run, I have no idea. Like, it'll be interesting to see how many of these streamers continue to open up those booster boxes. What I did not like, booster boxes are a better investment than I thought they were gonna be, because of the streamers and the YouTubers. And I knew when I was getting into it, I knew YouTubers were opening product like Leonhardt, but I didn't imagine that like streamers with millions of views were gonna be hunting down these things and opening them up. So I think just the experience of being able to open up a first edition booster pack is going to be extremely, extremely valuable. And that's something completely separate than the cards. And so that's something that I think, you can't get with anything, obviously that isn't that. And I think they're pretty special. And like when we had our booster box conversation, when we've talked, it's very much like first edition base set sealed product is so hard to come by. Um, the graded stuff isn't that hard to come by. The ungraded stuff, particularly like in middle grade, it's not that rare. Neo's very, even rare in a lot of cases potentially, and there's less of that. But in terms of like sealed product, it's just so hard to find. Yeah. Think you're pretty safe, James. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be buying anything right now, including trophy cards. I think that for me, a lot of my advice, right, it's like if you're buying trophy cards, there's some trophy cards I'm looking at for certain prices, but unless you have a lot of like extra money and really want to, push into the market, again, I think, again, it's best to probably wait to see what's going to happen in a year or 2 years, unless you like really want to dive in, and I get that, and just don't want to have the patience for that. Omnipoke says, Joe says, I imagine James is literally just a floating head surrounded by raw Pokemon cards. Yeah, I sent my cards out to James, to Z and G Emporium. So I'm gonna see how that goes. You gonna get me some good grades back, Z and G? And I did it because the wait line is so long. The wait line is so long. So I have a membership, and I still sent it through Graded Gem because, one, I'm friends with James and I trust him, and know he'll take good care of everything. But two, I'm hoping that they're gonna jump the line, and I'm gonna sell like some of the stuff I am grading. I'm hoping to sell. So I didn't want to wait the year it might take. I'm still waiting on an order from like 8 months ago. Although I know that James has told me that even, yeah, of course they get to jump the line, but even they're waiting right now a really long time, and it's been really slow. Proverb asks, Jake, what are your feelings towards people comparing cards to stocks or art, and where do you stand in this? So the main talking points, the main issues, like they are comparable in some ways, and in some ways they're not comparable. The psychology of this market is comparable to the psychology of stocks. So when we talk about bubbles, when we talk about retraces, when we talk about like when people are using that type of terminology, it's the exact same because it's the same fundamental emotional stuff that drives cards as does drive stocks, and you know that sort of that. So in that sense, there's a lot of similarity. The big differences in stocks and collectibles is that in a stock you're buying a percentage, albeit a very small percentage of a company that actually makes money and has profit and brings something in. And so you're actually gonna you there, and there are gonna be a lot of objective measures that you receive if you're watching your stock portfolio closely and you're tuning into conference calls and that the company puts out and reports, earnings reports that they're going to send you and that they're going to give you. If you look through that, you can have a sense of how's the company doing, what is the future of the company going to look like, what's their and that stuff can really help you make clear value judgments on whether that's a good stock to buy, whether that's overvalued or this is overvalued when you're picking individual stocks. If you're picking individual stocks, now the pluses of doing that is that you have people who are running a company who are sort of in your favor. Like they want the company to do well. They want you to do well because they own a lot of stock. So there's a shared interest. In something like Pokemon, we're actually competing with each other in a lot of ways. And of course, there's a shared interest of all the owners of the cards, but there's also a lot of like intense competition between like influencers wanting to push their product up or having their own incentives or wanting to sell you the most or wanting to inflate. Like there's a lot, and you're going to get that in stocks. You're going to get companies against companies and that sort of thing. But in terms of the company itself, like they want the person selling you the stock is on your side, is on your team, if you're buying it directly, or if you're buying it from another person, I suppose it's not. So that isn't a good example, but yeah, you're so the other things to talk about with that, that are better points than that point. So stocks will pay you dividends. Stocks will stocks will and a dividend means that you get a percentage of cash, every quarter, every 6 months, every year, and you'll pay lower capital gains on it in terms of taxes. There's a lot of benefits to stocks, even outside of just the fact that it's a company that actually has earnings reports, and it's not just a piece of cardboard that's dependent on subjective wanting and nostalgia. So in terms of like art, in terms of like other markets, those markets are art is a very risky market too. It's a very prices can go crazy. Something can be extremely cheap and then an artist can become like the new hit artist and it can be crazy valuable all of a sudden. Someone can die and that artist can go up. So there's a lot of craziness in it. Now, one thing I'll say about the art market is it tends to be a lot wealthier people who are more established and people who've been doing it a lot longer. A lot of the players in it, it's a much more established, mature market, and so you're not going to see quite as many of the immature things you might see in Pokemon, or the ability of like certain influencers to completely change everyone's opinion on something. There's going to be a little bit more established price points around certain things. My dad's a big art collector. If I ever have him on, maybe I could have him talk to you about that sort of stuff and the stuff that he's experienced and seen. But there are all sorts of scams and things too that same types of stuff that happen in the Pokemon market happen in the high-end art market, and also like other antiques and collectibles and type markets. CG Duwork says, according to Gary Vee, we are all buying Mona Lisas right now. Yeah, so yeah, Gary has been talking about how like Pokemon is the new art that he's quoted saying things like we are going to uh that people my age aren't going to want artwork. They're going to want cards instead, and we're going to hang cards on the wall and these sorts of things. And it's just like maybe, I to say what we're going to want in 10 to 20 years and what is silly, and it's such an intense hyped up statement. And if people are like fully buying into that and believing that's definitely going to be the case, that massive amounts of people our age are going to want that in their houses, and frankly our wives are going to be okay with that, in a lot of cases. I mean, there are a lot of women who love cards too, but I think that it's pretty male dominated thing. My girlfriend would be happy for us to put art on the walls. She would not be happy for us to put cards on the walls. There's all sorts of things. So we'll see. Perv says, "Thank you for the insight and response as always." Yeah. I think that I was a little bit. Part of my answer wasn't that good on the stocks there. The part about the competition, stuff. But the rest of it I think is valid and important, particularly the tax stuff and the dividend stuff, and the fact that the company is sort of is on your side in it, and also actually has profits and makes something that people want, and has that incentive to keep doing that. Let's see what else we got. Joe Cartwright, have you ever accidentally damaged a valuable card? No, nothing super valuable. I damaged like a $10 card before by mistake. I leaned on a card once. It's the only time I've ever damaged a card. I had a lot of cards, and it slipped underneath my arm, and I think I leaned on a corner, and I actually put a dent in the card. That's the only time ever that I've been aware of. I mean, it's possible. It's certainly possible I've scratched a hollow, or I've put a little whitening when I was putting something in a sleeve or a case, or sending stuff off to PSA. Putting 200 and some cards in sleeves and then cases, and then taking them out of sleeves and then putting them in card savers, and that whole process. It's possible. Gary V. So Jimmy Jam Meyer says Gary V has called stuff like this before, though. I'm not sure if it's true. So I think what you might be saying is that he's called stuff correctly before. And what I would say is there's a thin line between calling something correctly and creating something and forcing it and causing it to happen, and then pretending that you were right when in reality you were just jumping on a hype train and getting other people. So Gary Vee contacted Logan Paul, contacted a lot of people. In a lot of ways he's done a lot to make these markets and to increase these markets and to get more people into them. Now, did he recognize that people loved cards from this generation, and that if he did that, if the love and enjoyment wasn't there, the influencer wouldn't matter. Getting the information out there wouldn't matter. But I've also heard him say that he is not an effect on the market, or a real effect. And it's whenever someone that big who talks that much and that strongly says something like that, scam. That's silly. It's okay to be I've clearly had an effect on this market. I'm not sure how much of an effect. I think that people honestly love the cards anyway. And yeah, I wanted to, if he was honest and was just I wanted to build a market, I wanted to take a position in it. I also love cards and wanted it to be popular, and I want it to make me look good and help build my brand, right? That's what is actually happening. And if he was just honest about that, I wouldn't be concerned about him at all. But the fact that he doesn't say that, and he tries to appear like he's a saint, he has all these positive quotes that he puts up, work hard, all these saint-like quotes, and he doesn't acknowledge those things and isn't public about how he's does negative things and hurts people that, under the guise of that we need to be positive all the time, or this fake sort of positivity. That's what worries me about him and about listening to people like him. But he's a huge influencer. He has lots of control, and in this age of social media and branding, as you can see, You know, none of us, you know, me, all of us here in chat, none of us are capable of thinking for ourselves. Like we don't live in a vat. We're all constantly taking information from everyone around us, and that all has a huge impact on the way we think, the way we perceive value, all these sorts of things. And people who are saying that humans don't work that way, or you know, ignoring that fact, are you know, ignoring reality, from my perspective. Z&G says, yeah, PSA is crazy. I know Grey Gem guys in UK are talking to their contracts all the time to push them, but still way slower than we want. Yeah, PSA list on their website is 15 weeks just to log stuff. Crazy, crazy. Reaper says, happy wife, happy life. Yep. Um, so Watsy Fetish says, I don't understand stocks, houses, Bitcoin, etc. I don't invest in things that I don't understand. Yeah, I think that that's smart to generally not invest in things that you don't understand. But I also think maybe learning about some of those things and why the market, you know, steadily has gone up 8 to 12%, generally speaking, why big companies tend to be, you know, tend to keep growing, tend to keep increasing their profits, you know, how much more room do these companies have to grow in the world, how many more undeveloped, you know, areas in the world are there that they can still grow into. Like learning about the business plans, you know, of these giant companies like Amazon, McDonald's, Disney, you know, Nike, might make you see or figure out like why putting your money in with them is probably a good move, because they're probably, you know, over time going to keep growing, and plus you're gonna get dividends and other sorts of things back. CJ Dewick says, definitely a red flag when he states he has absolutely no effect. Yeah, talking about Gary Vee, I assume. Yeah, like for me, as I said before, I have like, if he was just honest, like 90% of my concerns about him would go away. But when someone says that they're honest a lot, that doesn't mean they're honest. Like they have to act honest and be honest to be honest. So I could say, "Well, I'm honest," means nothing. Honesty is something that is done, that is an action, and often people who talk about how honest they are a lot, not often, because a lot of people who talk about how they're honest are actually honest. So that is, I'm not sure that's a correlation. That actually has to do with like more like, is a person an external processor? Do they actually talk about their internal thoughts outwardly, or do they keep them to themselves? But it's not just because someone says like, I can say I'm a good person, I'm honest, you guys should trust me, I would never do anything to hurt you. You shouldn't believe that. That isn't you know, show it with action. You know, someone who treats you well over a long period, someone who gives you good information, someone who acknowledges when they've made mistakes. Like you need to see, and like, is he doing that? Are you seeing those things from him, or is he spending a lot of time telling you how great he is and how good, you know, how good of a person he is? Like branders spend a lot of time rather than being what they're saying that they are. They spend a lot of time telling you that they're that thing, and this is something from the psychological world that narcissistic people do, and sociopathic people tend to do, is that they're not, they don't care about you at all inside. They're not experiencing altruistic impulses or empathy for you, and so, but they know that that will make you not trust them and will make you not believe them and engage with them. And so what they tell you is that they're a great person a lot, and they focus a lot on that. Um, yeah, it's part of why, to be completely honest with you, like I really trust people like Z and G, like James here, you know, like that are just just like say what they know, say what they don't know, like work hard. If they say they're going to do something, they follow through and do it. You know, like that, like, you know, has good manners, like, you know, like all that stuff is what matters. Is what matters in this world. Now, of course, you know, people who have knowledge and insight and intellect is important too, but it's not very important without that other stuff. Steelomax says Gary Vee also said that COVID has nothing to do with the boom. Yeah, I mean, you know, on the reverse of that negative Gary Vee side, like, you also have to be careful of like going too far the other way and like thinking he's like a monster or some sort of terrible person. Like, I have no idea, right? I don't like what I see from him. He hasn't earned my trust. You know, he feels like a fake guru type. He gives me that vibe. Um, and but at the same time, like, I don't know. How would I know? How could I possibly know something like that, right? Swami says branders don't need to acknowledge failure, just keep chugging forward. CJ Dewick says, Jake, I love the psychology perspective you shed light on in regards to all these things. I truly find it interesting and appreciate it. I'm glad that you like it. It's definitely the way that I see the world and think about the world. John Pokemon says, if Pokemon were real, would you quit your job to become a trainer? Immediately. Well, no, I'd want to do both. Because I do... The truth is I love my career, and I'm not sure how satisfying like just being a Pokemon trainer would be. But I would absolutely want to train Pokemon. And, you know... Although the thing that would be weird is like the whole Pokemon fainting thing, like what that would actually feel like and be like in real life, and I'm probably going like too deep into something there, but it's just like I'm not sure like how terrifying is that? They kill the Pokemon, but they're not dead. They're just fainted, you know, and then they come back to life in that, you know, machine or whatever. I don't know. So I'm gonna do about just 6 or 7 more minutes, and then I'm gonna call it for tonight. All right, let's see what else we have here. GCS says, I think Gary Vee is the reason Logan Paul got into the market, so he's influencing the market in many different ways, directly and indirectly. Yeah. I mean, common sense to me, guys, would say Gary Vee called Logan and said, you know, he knows Logan loves Pokemon, or they talked about it, right? And probably, you know, this is all speculative, but probably it was something like, hey, you're a huge influencer. If you buy a bunch of Pokemon and then talk, what you want to do anyway because you love Pokemon, and then you talk about it, the prices are going to go up a lot and you're going to make a lot of money. And he was like, oh, that sounds like a win-win. I get to do something new. I get to bring in a brand new audience. Like, there's a lot of people who never talked about Logan Paul or thought about Logan Paul who just love Pokemon and who now, you know, are watching his stuff or are interested in him. It you know, it was such a win-win for him. And for Gary Vee, it was like, it was great because he gets to look, you know, smart and like a brander and like he knows what he's talking about and he gets to continue to build all this stuff up. He doesn't talk about market fundamentals. Like, Gary Vee isn't a value investor. He's a hype brander investor. It's all about the appearance of value, the social media aspects. You know, I don't hear him. I'm sure he also is savvy. He's a really smart guy. I'm sure he's also very savvy on value stuff. But what he talks about publicly, if you actually listened, like if you listen to his talks, he says nothing at all except feel good, be positive. Like, there's no content. There's no like how rare are items. Like, he doesn't share like a bunch of knowledge about like specific cards. He doesn't go into great detail. It's all very shallow. It's all very, you should buy. It's a great opportunity. It's amazing. And he's very effective at it because he has a lot of energy and you know, and I can do that too, right? I can talk like this and be like very emphatic and not really say very much. I'm not saying anything right now, but you know, it can bring people in because I'm making eye contact, because I'm engaging them. And all of those charismatic speaking points allow you to not need much content to keep people engaged. And now, all the people out there who have gotten a lot of value from Gary Vee, it's great. Like, if he made you feel good and motivated you and gave you energy, branders can do, like those people can be very motivating, and that's a positive. You know? So, we don't, you know, people can take positive things away from almost anything. And things that I think are negative can have a positive effect on someone else. Like that, we live in a very complicated world, and none of us have the answers to these sorts of things, and none of us are the ethical, are in charge of ethics and in charge of what's right or wrong and all this stuff, But I do think with free speech, we have a right to and an importance where we have those discussions and a place to talk back and forth. Tyler once says, I respectfully disagree with that, with the fact that he says nothing. I believe that he is also muzzled because people will think he is just pumping certain cards if he talks about them. So that's a good point, right? And I've heard him say that, and it's possible, definitely possible. My counter or my concern with that, Tyler, because that's that's the exact thought I've had too, and I get that, and I think all influencers struggle with that. Is he could talk about like what we do on the channel, which is talk about the content and the specifics. So doesn't say buy this, buy that, but says this is rare, this isn't rare. By giving facts, your influencer brand isn't affecting people. It's hopefully the content and the information that's affecting them. So you're persuaded by my argument, not by the fact that I have a big collection or that I seem to be articulate or that I can talk fast or something like that. And that's the danger is whenever, and I say this about everyone, and politics is a huge, political commentators. Like, there's style and there's content. So how much content is a person giving you versus how much style are they giving it to you in? So there are people who are poor speakers. There are YouTubers who, I don't want to say they're poor speakers necessarily, but that they're not extremely engaging. Maybe they're not very confident in front of a camera, but their content is excellent, and they're actually giving you a lot more content than other YouTubers who are giving you almost no content, but are entertaining and have a good thumbnails and all these sorts of things. So it's style versus content. And so when you're really listening to someone's advice, so entertainment is one thing. Entertainment, you're probably going to want the style often. Now, you might be entertained by content too, so you might want both ideally, but style might be important within that. Blitzforay gave me a gift. I appreciate that. Here's a small gift. Happy holidays. Happy holidays to you too, Blitzforay. Appreciate the thought and well wishes. But yeah. So when you're listening to investment advice, listen to people who are giving you content and not style, is what I would argue. And be careful when you're believing someone because of the style that they do it, because everything seems polished, everything seems clean, but the content isn't there. And you have to use your brain to analyze that and separate that. And it's true for political channels. You have people who like come on and they yell at you through a screen, and it's like, well, you didn't really say, if I really analyze what you said, you didn't really say anything that was very persuadable, but you were very like emotional and intense. And that's what sort of persuaded me. And so all of that stuff is very important when you're actually looking to get accurate information that you're going to use to make decisions on in your life, whether that's, in Pokemon, in business, in family, and relationships, and women, and whatever it is. Jimmy Jam Meyer says, because he doesn't want to affect the market, if he told you the cards to buy, that would be a red flag for me because of pump and dump. Yeah, that would be an increased red flag, although he did do that for a while, right? But he hasn't anymore, and I agree with you. That would be an increased red flag. But I think the other red flags are still there. And again, I think the main point, and this is, I think, the more subtle point to make, is that, guys, his goal is not to make money off of cards. His goal is to appear smart and as a good investor. Because what's way more important to him is the views and the ad revenue he gets, not the $1,000, $2,000 on the flip of a card. So him appearing like he knows what he's talking about and he knows what he's doing and he's smart and he cares about you and he's your friend is where all the money is, not flipping cards. So when we think about why he might not be doing pump and dump type schemes, it's probably because doing a pump and dump type scheme would be stupid. Because it would be too obvious and he'd lose a lot of followers, and that's where all the money is. That's where all the clout is. And that's where all the future is for him, is in the brand. And he's a huge narcissist. Like the way he talks about himself and how smart he is and how much he knows about everything. Like people like narcissists because it makes them feel safe and comfortable. It makes you feel good to know that someone has the answers and they can just give it to you. It's why people ask me like what I should buy. It's why all the Pokemon YouTubers like, it feels good. It would feel good to think that I know what I'm talking about and I know the answers to everything when I don't. When you should judge the content of my arguments based on the content of your own arguments, and it needs to be a discussion, right? And this it's the problem with celebrity, right, in our culture. Like there's so many problems with all this stuff, and there's a great undervaluing of the majority of people and a great overvaluing of certain people, and I very much strongly believe that, and I think it's a shame too because it goes hand in hand with like the income inequality and the fame inequality and the attention inequality and all sorts of things, and these people take full advantage of it. Jimmy Jam Meyer says he could care less about the money he gets from YouTube. He owns this $160 million company. So I definitely disagree with that, Jimmy. So I think that, first of all, the YouTube and all the content that he does is a humongous part of his brand and a humongous part of his wealth. He doesn't have $160 million in that company. The company's worth is $160 million. Now, what that means in terms of how much of the company is his, like how much of it is liquid, how much of it he can actually put in cash, I don't know the answer to that. Would be one thing. So second thing is people who are narcissistic often care as much about the way others perceive them as just money. So now I don't know if he's really narcissistic, and I'm not, I know I'm a therapist here, and you can't through a screen ever freaking say how narcissistic a person is, so I'm talking very generalistically when I say narcissism. I don't mean it clinically as a therapist. I mean it more just in casual conversation. But what I would argue with that is that it's fun for him also to be right, and that his whole business is built around advertising, right? And so if he can demonstrate that he can sell Pokemon cards through Logan Paul, that's going to demonstrate to a company like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Disney or that they should hire him, because although they know that he's kind of a faker, and a lot of people know he doesn't have good content, they know his style is amazing, and they know that people respond to him. So this is theoretical, but just to think about this sort of stuff. So they know that that what they care about is that he has the power to get attention and the power to get eyes. And so his social media platforms and all these sorts of things are actually what demonstrate to these big companies that they should hire him and that he knows what he's doing. Because so it's a lot more complicated than, like, it's all connected, and it's part of why there are a lot of people who don't like him, right? Because they're aware of that, they see what he does, and they see how effective it is, and they don't like that, and it's upsetting. Now, there are lessons you can take from it, right, in life, like the power of style. Style is so powerful. So much of life is style. How you look, how you appear. And it's not just about the arguments, and that is a reality that we all have to face, and we all have to make those decisions ourselves. Now, I think the best thing to do, though, for yourself to protect yourself is to be aware of that fact, and that'll make you a lot less susceptible to any sort of culty people in life. A lot less susceptible to people who are going to try and take advantage of you with their style, with their confidence, but not necessarily have substance that's going to actually help you in your life. And that's, when we think about a lot of like the get rich quick type schemes, it really focuses on that style piece. These people tend to be, master salesmen. They tend to be, they make you feel a certain way, but they're not necessarily giving you concrete, solid content type arguments that make you want to buy the thing. They're more making you feel like your life will go well, or you'll be rich, or there's they really play on your emotions, and you have to be careful with those emotions. Jimmy Jam Meyer says these points are very solid. Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, you and I don't know him, right? I mean, who knows him? He knows himself. Like even our families, So, you know, it's more important as a lesson on trying to think more critically about people in general than it matters about Gary Vee. Who cares? Like, he's one person. But there's a lot of that in society, and a lot of and all of these companies are hiring people like that, and there's a lot of branding around that. So Manny Simone Card says, "I've got him criminally wrong. You've got him completely wrong, and it's criminal." So what makes you so confident about? So let's do another second on Gary Vee, and then we really should end for tonight, because it is interesting. So this is kind of what I'm talking about a little bit. Is like, Manny, like, I completely respect your opinion, but like, why do you feel that I've got him wrong specifically? Like, what about the specifics of my argument do you feel like aren't valid? So Manny says he gives practical advice to apply to your life all the time. So what I would say is that I'm very capable of giving practical advice. You're probably very capable of giving practical advice, right? Like, how many people do you think are capable of giving pretty solid practical advice to people? I would say most people, you know, particularly if they're feeling calm, or they're, and is giving little bits of practical advice worth, you know, paying a man millions of dollars or something? So I mean, like, I'm appreciate your perspective, Manny, and I'm glad you shared it myself. We This is not a channel where we all need to agree on things, or, what I would say is, maybe if you want, you can leave a comment too, because I'm be really interested in hearing your argument. I don't. It's not very helpful just to say that you've got someone completely wrong. And I know in the comment section you're not gonna have time to formulate an argument. But in the comment section, okay, here he said something. He's someone who cares deeply about humans, and he cares more about making the world better than making money off of you. So what I would argue, Manny, is that's what he says, not what he does. And that's kind of the argument I was making before, is that one classic thing that people do is that they spend a lot of time telling you who they are instead of being it. So he tells you he works very hard. He tells you he's working all the time. He tells you he's a hustler. Do you know that? Or is that part of his brand? He tells you he's a good person. He tells you he loves and cares about people. Do you know that? You know? Do you know that through his actions? Or maybe if you analyze his actions, it's actually like he's doing a lot of things that show me he doesn't care very much about people, and that he does a lot of selfish things for himself, and he's kind of dishonest about his motives, and he's kind of manipulative and tries to make himself look better than he actually is. Because those are the vibes I get from him. When anyone says that they're perfect, or that they don't get things wrong, so Manny says, it is what he does. He walks the walk he shows. I know. Yeah. So Manny, that's not a good argument that he walks the, like, you don't know that. Like, he says it, right? But what are his actions, Manny? Like, what are some of his generous actions? Stila Max says he's not 100% an angel, my friend. People need to stop being black and white, but instead look at the gray areas. So I would argue that's what I'm doing, is looking at the gray areas and not being black and white, and actually trying to analyze what he is doing and what he isn't doing would be my argument. So Manny says that he built several schools in Africa. So is it possible, Manny, just possible, that he doesn't care about people in Africa and that he built that, you know, for his clout and for his brand? I'm not saying that that's true, but is it possible? But couldn't that fit a narrative? I don't know. How would I possibly know, right? Like, how do you know what's in a person's heart? We're talking about Gary Vee, by the way, guys, not King Pokemon. You know, one hard thing in life, and so I wrote my senior thesis in college on this, on altruism, on this notion of altruism, right? And I think one thing that's tough, Manny, and, you know, is that, like, knowing if a person is doing something for altruistic reasons, or knowing, or are they giving away to charity to make themselves look good and actually amass more wealth because they've done a calculation to make themselves look better? It's a very hard thing to know. And so I wrote a whole paper on this and a study on this, and did a study actually I did a research project on it with people to see how selfless people were, to attempt to see it, and to see that is selfless help actually more helpful than non-selfless help. And it's a really important. So Mike says I'm very biased against Gary Vee, and I'll never be convinced he's a good guy. You also don't have anything to back up your theories of him. I mean, I feel like my arguments are pretty good. So that isn't specific enough, Mike. You're just saying I'm not saying anything, and I feel like I've said quite a bit. Dario Melzia says, real charity goes unseen and unspoken about. Yeah, a lot of the time it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Like, sometimes people do charity out in public, and they're doing it because they really care about people. Sometimes often it's not so black and white. Like, people do charity both to help others and to make themselves look good. You know? But again, it's about the honesty. It's about the honesty about it. Jaco is bringing the dark energy. Yeah. Classic. So, first of all, like, I respect anyone here who loves Gary Vee and thinks that I'm biased against him. I respect your opinion. It's okay. And you guys might know him a lot better than I do, too. You know? And that's okay, too. So, what I hope, though, is that you're able to, you know, what I would hope for you guys personally is that you're able to think critically about what I said. Just consider it. If it doesn't make sense, or you don't think I'm right, then that's okay, right? You know, at least consider it. But I hope also it doesn't mean that you now hate me. I'm cool with you guys liking Gary Vee and me thinking that he's not, like, potentially not that great. Now, I don't really know, right? But that I have some doubts, and that maybe he isn't the saint that's here to, like, save the world, you know, or business saint, and that he's really helping people and that that's his motivations. I have some doubt about that, but I think it's okay that you guys don't. But hopefully we can have a civil back and forth, you know, and talk about those perspectives. So I'm going to end for today. I really do appreciate all the comments, and I love the, believe it or not, I appreciate that people are you know, pushing back on this, and I think that's part of what's great about live chats is that we can actually discuss things, and maybe I can give you guys some new perspectives to think about, and you guys can give me some new perspectives to think about that I haven't thought about before. Swami says, think critically of Gary Vee and think critically of Jake. Yeah. Also question my motives. I need to, like, you know, it's uh you know, I am not a saint. I struggle myself with doing things in other, being altruistic and helping people. I struggle being too selfish at times. I certainly can be too selfish in my relationships, and my even in my interpersonal relationships. Like, these are human struggles, you know. So, all right. So Manny Simone Card says it's like saying, you know what, maybe your best friend or girlfriend isn't who they say they are. At what point do you accept someone is who they say they are? I mean, first of all, none of us are exactly who we say we are. That's for sure. But I think that when you really know someone intimately and you live with them day in and day out, you get more of a picture than someone who maybe you just see through a computer screen who's telling you. You know, most of the time I think when you're seeing Gary, you're probably not having a back and forth without cameras where you really get to see who they are. You're probably seeing him portray himself the way he wants to portray himself, and maybe not even coming back and forth, you know. And so I think that, you know, for me too, like, I try and be vulnerable on this camera, on this YouTube channel, but I'm not going to be as vulnerable as I would be with my girlfriend, you know, those types of things. So good stuff to think about. Again, thank you for coming. I really enjoyed it. Appreciate it. And I will. We definitely veered off Pokemon and into psychology and philosophy a bit here in the end, but hopefully some people enjoyed it, and that it was thoughtful and interesting. I enjoyed hearing all of your perspectives as always, and I'll talk to you guys all next Sunday where we'll definitely dive